Hey mathematics learners, welcome to Distance Learning with Lee, where I make learning mathematics super easy. So on today's video tutorial guys, we're going to be tackling question 3.1 from the grade 12 mathematical literacy paper 1 that was written in June 2023. And this question just falls under the umbrella of data handling because we're going to be calculating or determining what the mean is. We're going to be working with percentage and we're going to be calculating probability. Okay, so before we get started with today's video tutorial guys, please make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. Please make sure that you click on that notification bell so that you get notified every single time I upload a new video tutorial guys. And also please don't forget to give these video tutorials a huge thumbs up guys. It really helps the channel grow and it helps the channel to reach more learners that want to better their mathematics. Thank you so much guys for recommending the channel, for sharing the channel, for liking these tutorials. We have reached 15,000 subscribers guys. My plan is to teach the whole of South Africa, to get these video tutorials to reach every single learner in this country. So please help me out by continuing to share the channel. I really appreciate it guys. This really means a lot to me. You guys don't know. Okay, so without any further ado guys, let's get started with today's video tutorial. So like I mentioned, in today's video tutorial, guys, we're going to be tackling question 3.1. And please make sure that you've downloaded annexure, the addendum, right? And we're going to be focusing on annexure B with this question. So we're going to be analyzing this table that is given to us that represents the number of people that are employed at a Moto Holdings in August 2020 and 2019. So we're going to be using annexure B to help us answer questions that are given to us. Okay, so let's have a look. Question 3.1. It says table 2 in annexure B shows the number of people that are employed at Motor Holdings MH in August 2020 and 2019. Okay, so this annexure B basically shows the number of people that are employed at this company, right, in the month of August 2020 and August 2019. Okay, we are told that in August 2020 the company had 41 motor dealerships and a head office. So we are told that this company basically had or owned 41 motor dealerships, right, and one head office. So use table 2 in annexure B to answer the questions that follow. Question 3.1.1 says, write down the total number of semi-skilled workers, right, that are employed by MH during August 2020. Okay, so we're still going to highlight the important or the keywords, right? So we want to look for the total number, right, of the semi-skilled workers that are employed in August 2020. Okay, so let's have a look at this table that is basically given to us, right? So I want to try to zoom it in, right? So just to make it a bit bigger, and let's just analyze this table and see what's actually going on. Okay, so I'm just hoping that you guys have actually downloaded this table because I can't actually cut it if I zoom it in a bit too much. But then let's see, it's fine, right? We are told that table 2 represents the number of people that are employed at Motor Holdings in August 2020 and 2019, right? So we are given here on this first column all the employees, right? This includes the staff with disabilities. We're given the top management, senior management, professionally qualified and experienced specialists. We are told there's a skilled, technically and academically qualified, the semi-skilled employees and the unskilled employees, right? Then we're given a row that gives the males, the females, and then how many foreign nationals they have within these categories, right? Then we're given B, C, I, and W. So the B stands for black, C is the colored, the I is the Indian, W is the white, right? And the M and the the F is the male and the female. Okay, so for example, how would we analyze just this first row? Okay, so that means that this company in the top management, right, has two black males, zero coloreds, six Indians, and 48 whites. Okay, in the top, and these are all males. Okay, and in the top management, the females, we've got four black females, three coloreds, females, one Indian female, and nine white females. Okay, then the foreign nationals that they have here, okay, one male and zero female. Okay, and the total number of employees that they have in the top management, when we go right through the row, is 74. Okay, so what is actually happening here? All right, here we're given the total, right, for August 2020 and the total for August 2019. We're given that the total number of black males, right, was 682 in August 2020. The total number of colored males in 2020 was 63. The total number of black males in August 2019 was 909, right? Okay. And when we go right through to the end, okay, guys, I'm going to zoom this out. Okay, hope you guys can still see. Okay, and when you go right through to the end here, right here, this just basically tells us how many total employees they had in August 2020, how many total employees they had in August 2019. Okay, so that's just the total number of employees, right? Then here we're given the staff with disabilities. How many staff with disabilities are in top management, right? Okay, so we see here there's zero black males, there's zero colored males, there's zero Indian males, and one white male, right? So that's how you analyze. And in total, how many staff with disabilities are in top management? Just two, right? But it's also important to note here they just also just giving us a breakdown of the staff with disabilities, right? But that those values are actually included here as well, right? They're just giving us a breakdown of how many of them are actually in top management, how many of them are actually in senior management, and so on and so forth. But these values are also included in these values as well, because it says all employees, including the staff with disabilities. Here it just gives us a further breakdown so that we actually know how many actually were there. In terms of the staff with disabilities in top management, senior management, and so on and so forth. Okay, so I hope it's not confusing. I think it might get confusing just here. Okay, so I hope that I've clarified that for you. So let's have a look at the initial question, right? Because we were just analyzing. We have to basically write down the total number of semi-skilled workers that are employed by MH during August 2020. Okay, so we're going to be looking at semi-skilled. We want the total number for August 2020. Okay, so we're going to be focusing our attention on semi-skilled workers that worked in the company during August 2020 was 537. So I already know someone is already confused. Like, how do you know that this figure represents the number of employees for 2020 and not 2019? Okay, so I'm basically going to take the column for the males, and I'm going to focus on the blacks, right? So when you basically go down this column, right, you'll find that if you add the 2 plus the 50 plus the 203 plus the 92, if you add all those values up together, you'll actually get 682. So you'll get the figures for 2020. Okay, so that's how we know that all of these values that are given in all these rows are actually the statistics for all the employees for the year 2020 and not the year 2019. So that's how we know that these semi-skilled workers were the ones that were employed during August 2020, right? So we had 537 semi-skilled workers. Okay, so that is our answer. All right, so we had 537 semi-skilled workers during August 2020. All right, let's have a look at the next question. Question 3.1.2 says determine the difference in the total number of employees from August 2019 to August 2020. Okay, so this question yet again tells us exactly what we need to do. So if we want the difference, right, we already know that we're going to be subtracting, okay, the number of employees that they had in August 2019 to the number of total employees that they had in August 2020. So we want to determine how many total employees did they have in August 2019? How many total employees did they have in August 2020? And we're going to subtract these values from each other. Okay, so we're obviously going to start off with the most recent year. Okay, so we're going to start off with the August 2020 total number of employees minus August 2019 total number of employees. Okay, from 2019 to 2020. So we're going to start off with the recent year minus the previous year. Okay, so let's have a look. All right, so how many total employees did they have in August 2020? Okay, so we're going to have a look at our table here. The total employees that they had in August 2020 is 2,163. Remember, you don't have to now go and add the value for the staff with disabilities, because this value already includes the staff with disabilities. Okay, so then the total employees, right, for August 2020 was just 2,163. Okay, so we're just gonna write that down. Okay, minus how many total employees did they have in August 2019? Okay, we're gonna go to this table. Total for August 2019 was just 2,828. Again, we're not going to add this 46 here, okay? Because this figure of 2,828 also includes the staff with disabilities. So we don't have to now add again 46, okay? So then we're just going to add 2,828, okay? We want the difference, okay? So if they want the difference, that means that we're going to be subtracting these two values from each other, okay? All right, so if you take 2,163 minus 2,828, right, what do you get? Right, you get a negative 665. So someone already is confused. I know someone is like, what is going on, Lee? Did you make a mistake? Right, so guys, it's very important that you note something. Now, in August, I need to start with August, right? The year was August 2019, right? And this company had, right, 2,828 total employees, right? And then we went to the year of August 2020. Then the company now had 2,163 employees, right? What are we noticing? What is happening? Do you see that the total number of employees that they had decreased from August 2019 to August 2020? So that is why we have that negative there, right? The employees actually decreased by 665. Okay, so someone might have made the mistake of thinking, oh, if they said from 2019 to 2020, then I'm just gonna say I'm gonna start with the 2019 value of 2,828 minus the 2020 value of 2,163, and then you punch it into your calculator, okay, and then you'll get 665. But then now, right, the question is asking you, right, what is the difference in the total number of employees? Okay, so now you need to note that actually, when you're actually getting that 665, yeah, this 665 doesn't mean that the employees increased by 665. They actually decreased. So now we need to think when we're answering questions now. We're not just punching values in J, trying to finish. Guys, we need to really think about this question, right? Think about it logically, okay? So we can see that actually the employees decreased by negative 665. Okay, so if you just write 665, you're basically saying that, okay, the difference is 665, but you're not really giving an accurate representation of what's happening. The employees decreased, okay, by 665. Okay, so it's negative 665 because you can see that there was more employees in 2019 compared to 2020, right? So there was a decrease in the number of employees. Okay, so we need to think all the time when we're answering our questions. Okay, all right, let's have a look at the next question. Question 3.1.3. It says determine the total number of staff with disabilities, right? So we're going to highlight the keywords here. We want to determine what is the number of staff with disabilities that are employed in 2020 as a percentage of all the employees in 2020. Okay, so firstly, we want to determine what was the total number of employees in 2020. Okay, we already calculated that value, right? Then we want to determine how many staff, or what was the number of staff with disabilities in 2020, right? And then you already know here, if you want to determine the percentage, right, we take the value, right? Because we want to determine the percentage of the staff with disabilities, right? What is the percentage of staff with disabilities compared, what is the percentage of the staff with disabilities to the total number of or the total staff that we have in the company? Okay, so that is what we're going to do, and that is how we're going to think about approaching, and that is how we're going to think when we basically try to approach this question. So we're basically first going to write down the value of the staff with disabilities in 2020. Then we're going to write down how many staff, what is the number of staff that was employed in 2020, and then we want to take it from there. So the staff with disabilities for 2020, right? We're going to have a look at our table. Staff with disability. What was the total staff with disability? So we're going to focus on this row. The total staff, okay, with disability for 2020. I'm going to be focusing on this row that I've just highlighted for you guys here, right? So what is the total, right? It was 34. So we had 34 staff with disabilities, right, in August 2020, okay, right? And then what was the number of all the employees in 2020? We remember we already did this in the previous question. Okay, the total number of employees for 2020, we're going to be focusing on this row. Remember, we already did this, but I'm just doing it again, right? So the total employees was 2,163, right? And now the question basically wants us to determine the number of staff with, we want to basically determine the number of staff with disabilities employed in 2020 as a percentage of all the employees, right? So what is the percentage of the staff that had disabilities to all the staff, right? So how are we going to set this up, right? So to determine the percentage, right? Okay, the percentage is equal to, what is the total number of staff with disabilities? It's 34, all right, divided by, what is the total number of employees, right? So remember, this value also includes the staff with disabilities, right? So we're going to divide it by 2,160. Remember, we want the percentage, so we want to multiply it by 100. Okay, so if you punch this into your calculator, you'll find that the percentage of the staff with disabilities, right, to all the employees is equal to 1.571890892%, which is approximately equal to, if you round this off to 2 decimal places, we see that here the third digit after the comma is 1, so it's less than 5. So that means that we're going to keep this value the same. We're not going to change it. Okay, so it's 1.57%. Okay, so that is the percentage of the staff with disabilities. They had 1.5% staff, 1.57% of staff with disabilities in 2020. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed that one. let's have a look at the next question. Question 3.1.4 says calculate the average number of employees per dealership, right? So when they're talking about average, guys, remember when I started off the video tutorial, I did mention that we have to use the concepts that we've learned when it comes to calculating the mean somewhere in this question, right? So here we want to calculate the average number of employees per dealership, right? If 1.5% of the total number, right? So already here we told what to do. We are told that if 1.5% of the total number of employees worked at the head office in 2019. Okay, so what is the average? So in this case, we already know that we want to determine the mean or the average number of employees that they have roughly per dealership, right? If 1.5% of the total number of employees work at the head office in August 2020. Okay, so how will we start off this question, right? I think the best way that we can basically structure our answer, our solution, is just think of, I mean, when you're calculating the average of something, right? How do we calculate the average? Okay, how do you calculate the average, right? We know that when we calculate the average, right, or the mean, okay, the average is equal to, okay, to get the mean or to determine the average, right? We basically add up all the values. So it's the total values divided by how many individual values do you have. I'm going to say divided by n, right? So let's say, for example, I say to you, what was the average that the class obtained in their mathematical literacy test, right? I want to explain this concept. So let's say 3 learners wrote this mathematical literacy test. One got 45%, the other one got 70%, the other one got 60%. Okay, at least 2 passed, right? So now we want to determine the average. So how will we determine the average? What we would do, we would add up the 45% plus the 70 plus the 60, and we divide it by how many learners do you have? We've got 1, 2, 3. So that n basically says that how many, right, individual values are we working with. Okay, so I just thought it would be important for me to basically highlight that. Okay, so this is basically going to be our starting point, right? So this question asked us to basically determine the average of what? Average number of employees per dealership. Okay, and here we already know that we need to determine the total number of employees in the dealership, right? That's what we want to determine, right? What is our n? We already know that, right? Our n is equal to 41, right? Because we were told that, right? We want to determine the average number of employees per dealership if 1.5% of the total number of employees worked at the head office in August 2020. Okay, so here we're told that 1.5% of the total employees go to work at the head office, right? And the rest work at the dealerships, right? So we want to determine how many or what was the average of the number of workers that worked at the dealership, right? So here we want to basically determine what is the total number of employees that worked at the dealerships, right? So that is why we want to basically divide by the total number of dealerships that we have, which is 41. Okay, so how will we get the total number of employees that worked at the dealership, right? So the first thing that we need to know, right? We already know that this company had, okay, we already know that in August 2020, okay, the company had 2,163 employees, right? And we told that out of that 2,163 employees, 1.5, right? We are told that 1.5% of these 2,163 employees actually worked at the head office. Okay, right. So how is this actually relevant? Okay, this is actually relevant because now once we determine how many of these employees were at the head office, then we will be able to subtract the number of workers that worked at the head office from the total number of employees. And then from there, this value that we would now have will only represent the total number of employees that work at the dealership. All right. So that's basically what we're trying to achieve. Okay. So now we already know. Okay, we already know the total number of employees that work for the MH Motor Company. Now we want to determine how many of them were actually at the head office, right? So if we take 1.5%, that is the same as saying 1.5 divided by 100. When we see of, we're going to multiply it by, right, 2163. And this value will give us the total number of employees that work at the head office, all right? So if you punch this into your calculator, 1.5 divided by 100 multiplied by 2163, you will get that actually 32.445 employees worked at the head office. All right. So now what do we need to do now, right? Remember, we just want to determine how many employees were actually at or worked at the dealership. Okay, so we need to now subtract this value of 32.445 from the value of 2163 to determine the total number of employees that actually worked at the dealership. Okay, so now the employees, I'm going to say therefore the employees that worked at the dealership is equal to that 2163 minus the value of 32.445 to get that there was a total of 2130.555 employees that worked at the dealership, right? So now this is a figure, this is a value that we can actually work with, right, to determine our average, because we wanted to the question basically asked us to determine or to calculate the average number of employees per dealership. Okay, another thing that I also want to just reiterate with this question is that we don't really have to think of, okay, but you don't get 32.445 people. Okay, people don't come in halves, it's either a whole person. Okay, when we're dealing with people, we are actually dealing with discrete data. Okay, but in this case, guys, because we're actually calculating an average, right, we can leave it in decimal form because we're dealing with an approximation. It's an approximation. Okay, we are approximating. Okay, so we can leave it like in decimal form. We don't really have to worry about now rounding it off because we're just approximating roughly on average, right? This is the number of people that we have per dealership. Okay, so I hope that makes sense, because I know someone was probably thinking, but you can't get 32.455 employees, so I must just underestimate and say it's 32 people. Okay, just leave it like this because we're approximating, we're calculating an average. Okay, so an average is approximately, this is how many we've got. Okay, so we can just leave it in point form. All right, so we're going to substitute now these values into this original formula that I basically did for you guys, that to get the mean is equal to the total number of employees that work at a particular at dealerships divided by the total number of dealerships that we have, right? So therefore the average, right, is equal to, we calculated that the employees that work at the dealerships, the total number of employees that work at the dealership is 2130.555 divided by, what was the end? The total number of dealerships that we have, right? When the question started off, it told us that we have 41 motor dealerships, okay? And one head office. So it's going to be 41. Then if you punch this into your calculator, you will get that on average, there is 51.9647561 people or employees per dealership. All right, So in this case, I mean, we don't have to basically round this off to two decimal places. The question didn't really specify that we need to round off the value to two decimal places or what. So we can also just leave our answer like that. All right. So I hope this one was nice. I think this one is a bit, it could be a bit confusing. Okay. I think it could be confusing where you basically need to realize that you first need to calculate. You actually need to calculate how many total employees were there, right? Then from there, use the information that was given of 1.5% of the total employees worked at the head office to help us determine how many employees we had at the head office, right? And then from there, we need to subtract that value, right, from the total number of employees, all right? And then from there, we're going to use only the value that deals with the number of employees that are at a dealership to help us calculate how many employees do we have per dealership. Okay, so I hope that when I didn't confuse anyone there. Okay, I tried to really explain it as simple as I can. Okay, so I hope I didn't lose anyone there. All right, so let's have a look at the last question. So this is a nice, easy 3 marks, right? So let's just pay attention. Question 3.1.5 says determine as a percentage. You see now they are specified, right? As a percentage, right? And you need to round off your answer to three decimal places. The probability of randomly choosing a colored female from the list of employees in 2020. Okay, how are we going to start off this question? Already, because we're calculating probability, we need to know how do we calculate probability, right? How do we calculate probability? We already know that to calculate probability, if you've been watching all my video tutorials, you already know this. Probability is equal to the favorable outcomes or the outcomes that you want divided by the total outcomes. Okay, so I'm going to write that down. Okay, so it's the favorable outcomes divided by the total outcome. So what are the favorable outcomes in this context? What are the outcomes that we want? Okay, the question tells you want to determine the probability of choosing a colored female from the list of employees in August 2020, right? So our favorable outcomes is choosing what? The colored female, right? Okay, in August 2020. And what are the total outcomes? So the total outcomes is basically how many total employees, right, did we have in August 20? So what is the total number of employees for August 2020? Okay, so we've basically set up our equation or what we need to do, right? So now all that we need to do is determine the total number of colored female, the total number of total employees, right? And we need to also remember, right? It's set as a percentage. We want to determine the probability as a percentage. So whatever answer that we have, we want to multiply by 100 because we want to determine the probability as a percentage. It was clear on how the answer should be. Okay, so probability is equal to what are the total number of colored females in 2020, right? So we're going to go to our table, right? We're going to have a look at the column that spoke about females. So that is our column that has the females, right? And we're going to be focusing on the colored females, okay? So I'm just going to highlight the column that has the females, right? And we want the colored females for August 2020. So I'm going to highlight the line for August 2020. It's this line here. This is the row that we're going to be focusing on, right? And how many colored females did we have in August 2020? We had 54. C for colored females in August 2020. Okay, so we're going to write that down. Okay, we had 54 divided by how many total employees did we have in August 2020? So we've already done this, right? Okay, we already know in August 2020, the total number of employees that we had was. So we're going to focus on August 2020. We're going to go all the way down. Total number, we said that it was 2,163. And remember, we wanted as a percentage. So we're going to multiply it by 100. Okay, so if you take 54 divided by 2163, multiplied by 100, you will get 2.496532594%. Okay, so the probability of actually randomly choosing a colored female from the list of the total employees in 2020 is 2.496532594%. But remember, the question asked us to determine the probability as a percentage and round it off to 3 decimal places. Okay, so if something has to be rounded off to 3 decimal places, that means that your final answer needs to only have 3 decimal places. So if your final answer only needs to have 3 decimal places, what do we look at to help us round off? That means that we're going to look at the fourth value after the comma, because the fourth digit actually after the comma will tell us what we need to do to the third digit. Okay, so let's look at the fourth value. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the fourth value, right? This is the fourth value after the comma, right? So this value is going to tell us what we need to do to the 6. Okay, and because this value is a 5, remember, when we're rounding off, if it's 5 or above 5, we round the value up. Okay, so because this is 5, that means that we need to basically round the 6 up. Okay, it must go up 1 unit. Okay, so then the final answer is going to be 2.497%. Okay, so that is the probability of randomly choosing a colored female in 2020 from the total number of employees. All right, and that is it, guys, for today's video tutorial. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I surely did, right? I hope I basically explained all concepts in detail. I really pray I didn't lose anyone here, guys. Please, if you were confused, play the video tutorial again. Play it again, listen, right? And you should be fine. Okay, I really think I explained all of these concepts in a nice and easy way for you guys to understand. Okay, and that is it. On the next video tutorial, guys, we are going to be analyzing finally, right, a box and whisker diagram. And then we're going to be answering questions pertaining to this box and whisker. Please make sure that you guys are subscribed to the channel and you have your notification bells turned on. And I'll see you guys on my next upload. That is it, guys, and I'll see you guys on my next upload, Distance Learning with Lee, where I make learning mathematics super easy. Bye, guys.